Acosta in From is far from being my favorite character, but she's also far from being the worst character, and I think people can be too hard on her sometimes. If you haven't seen From, or if you're currently watching it, go ahead and skadoodle, because there's going to be spoilage. Now, Danny Acosta, again, is far from being my favorite character, and I am a huge Boyd fan. Boyd has been one of my favorite characters since the first episode of the series. And honestly, I understand his frustration with Acosta when she first arrives into town. And I agree with him on like 90% of what he says and does when it comes to Acosta. And even if Acosta shooting Nikki was an accident, the punishment that Boyd gave to Acosta by only giving her the gun and no ammo is absolutely justified. But let's take a second and put ourselves into Acosta's shoes. It was a normal, typical day of work for Acosta. She and two EMTs get called to an accident involving Tabitha, who is now missing from a hospital when the police originally wanted to question her. So Acosta is there for Tabitha, as well as the fact that Henry is now injured and they're taking him to the hospital where they're going to end up asking Tabitha more questions. And then suddenly they see the tree and the crows, and they do what everyone does and they turn the ambulance around and they start driving back the other way. It's already getting dark by the time they get into town. And when they do get there, there's a woman lying in the middle of the road. Being two EMTs, they get out of their vehicle to go make sure that the woman is okay. Acosta goes with them as backup because this is a very strange situation that they're finding themselves in. When all of a sudden the two EMTs get their throats ripped out and monsters are approaching Acosta from every direction, and so she runs. I admit, handcuffing Tabitha to the inside of the ambulance and ditching Henry was a bad move on Acosta. But Acosta runs up to Colony House and she's being surrounded by monsters and she just starts letting off shots out of her gun. A stray shot goes through the colony window and ends up hitting Nikki, which then eventually kills her later on in the night. But throughout the series, we're told that the first night for people can get really rough. That's why they have straps on the bed in the Colony House. And Acosta's first night included seeing two people she probably regularly worked with get offed. And then she shot at several things that looked human, but were absolutely unaffected by the bullets. And when the Colony House does let Acosta in, and Acosta realizes that she shot Nikki, you can tell there's an immediate guilt there. She didn't mean to, it was an accident. However, it shows you that Acosta acts before she thinks. Approaching the Colony House, she should have seen that the lights in Colony House were on. And if she was really observant, she would have seen the faces that were looking outside watching what was happening. But again, she was panicking and she was just letting off rounds. So when Boyd blows up on her and takes her firearm, it's justified. But the thing is that Acosta tries to make up for that mistake. I mean, Jim has made mistakes, Jade has made mistakes. For crying out loud, Sarah has made mistakes. So why is Boyd treating Acosta like this when he hasn't treated other people who have done even worse things the same way? Acosta then tries to be helpful to the town. She tries to investigate Tilly's murder. She apologizes to Boyd time and time again and even offers her services to him as like an extra deputy kind of deal. And she stops Boyd from torturing Elgin. Granted, she didn't stop the overall torturing as Sarah continued it, but she still stood up for Elgin in that moment. Again, Acosta's not my favorite. She is just really passionate about her job, and we see that she's capable of guilt and capable of taking accountability for her past actions, with the desire of bettering herself as well. Acosta and Boyd were never going to like each other, and she's questioned Boyd's power within Fromville since she arrived, and now she's vying for that power. But let's take a second and think about it. Would Acosta make a good leader in Fromville? I don't think so. Not in the slightest. I don't think that Acosta would necessarily be a bad leader, but she definitely would not be able to lead with the same capacity that Boyd does. And right off the bat, Acosta has not even been in the town long enough to even be experienced enough to lead the town, not understanding that they have tried and tried and tried to get out of this town. There's already a level of her thinking that she's better than the people around her, that she has ideas that they haven't had. And who knows, she might have ideas that they never thought of, kind of like Jade thought of building a radio. But Boyd has been there far longer than Acosta has. And since the day that he got there to the point that we see him in season 1, episode 1, he has done so much to make sure that the town is safe, including going out into the woods and finding the talismans. And then to come back the next day after finding the talismans to find his wife going around taking people out. And he makes a huge sacrifice for the town to protect the town and to protect Ellis. His leadership started shaking when we saw him in episode 1 of season 1, but he was also starting to deal with a lot more at that time as well, especially with the Parkinson's Parkinson's. But with his Parkinson's, I think that he should step down as leader and make Kenny the leader. But I feel like if Kenny were to become leader, he would make Acosta his deputy, and then she would constantly steamroll him. But Kenny makes the better leader than Acosta because Kenny has been there longer, and he's been in a position of authority for quite some time since Boyd made him his deputy. Acosta would not be a good leader for Fromville. She acts before she thinks. Shooting Nikki is a prime example. Even if it was an accident, she wasn't paying attention to her surroundings and she was just letting off shots. She has a very poor grasp on her anger, making jabs at Boyd when she's demanding for her firearm back, which also shows a slight disrespect for authority as well. So if she becomes a person of authority, I feel like that power would get to her head because now there's no longer an authority above her that she would have to listen to. But most importantly, she just does not have the knowledge about the town and about the space that they're in to be able to properly lead the town and keep them safe. If Acosta gets control of the town in season 4, I feel like we could see a similar massacre to what Victor went through when he was a kid. Similar to how Christopher changed, that's when the massacre happened back then. I think it's going to be when Boyd changes and Acosta takes over that there's going to be another massacre. But anyways, those are just my thoughts on Acosta. She may not be the best, but she is far from the worst. But what are your thoughts on Acosta? And who do you think would make the best leader after Boyd? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and let me know.